So I'm very happy to introduce like our first plenary speaker, Robert O'Dowd, who is like for me like is a pioneer in the virtual exchange. In the area of like language teaching and all other fields. I recently I learned about virtual exchange as the name last year. I had the opportunity to attend one of Robert's workshops through like Uni Collaboration organization, and I learned a lot. And since then, I'm like, looking forward to an opportunity to conduct a virtual exchange project. So you'll learn about like his projects soon. But I'll try to give a brief summary of his like many of achievements. So Dr. Robert O'Dowd is an associate professor for English as a foreign language and applied linguistics at the University of León, Spain. And he has taught at universities in Ireland, Germany, and Spain. And he has numerous publications on the application of virtual exchange in university and pre-university education settings. He was the founding president of the Uni Collaboration academic organization for telecollaboration and virtual exchange collaboration organization, and he has been invited to be plenary speaker at many international conferences in the United States, Asia, and across Europe. And we are very lucky to have him today at our conference. And among his recent activities, Robert was invited in 2019 to be co-editor of a special edition of the prestigious journal Language Learning and Technology on the theme of virtual exchange and foreign language education. He has also coordinated the Erasmus projects, integrating international networks in higher education. I think very important for us to have like sustained networks, and the European policy experiment evaluating and upscaling collaborative teacher education between 2017 and 2019. And currently he is coordinating the Erasmus Plus European policy experiment, virtual innovation and support networks for teachers, like starting in 2021 to end in 2024. And on our website, you have the bio, and you can see the list of many publications by our like plenary speaker. So I would like to thank Robert one more time for accepting our offer, and I'll give the floor to him.
Thank you very much. That's very kind words, Sebnem. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for inviting me. I'm very disappointed I don't get to go to Istanbul. I've been in your country and in your city only once before at another conference, and I always wanted to go back. So I hope there will be more events in the future, and I get a chance to visit you there. And you also from the photos.
I can promise for that.
Good. Well. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've all learned in the past couple of years we have to stop promising about physical events anywhere, right? Because we're kind of afraid to make promises anymore. All we can do is have our best intentions that we will start traveling again and have normal lives again soon. Anyway, so thank you very much to all of you for inviting me and for coming to listen this morning. I'm going to talk to you about virtual exchange. And to kind of give you a little bit of context about this, the speaker, the lady that spoke before, Gizem or Gizem, I'm not too sure how I should pronounce her name properly. I apologize for that. But Sebnem, how do we say her name properly?
Gizem.
Well, Gizem gave a really interesting talk about the DigiComp framework. Okay. And two of the parts of that are, collaboration and professional development. All right, these are two parts that are important not only for our students, our learners, but also for us as teachers. Okay, and what I'm talking about today, virtual exchange, I think is an important part of both this collaborative aspect and the professional development aspect of digital competences for students and for teachers. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now, and you should be able to see that. Okay, I think I just get it to. Well, of course, with Zoom, you have to always minimize all of your hide floating meeting controls. There you go. Okay. So now I think that should be okay. I think you should guys be able to see that. Sebnem, I'm going to ask you from time to time maybe to interrupt me if
Sure.
my connection breaks down or anything like that,
Okay.
or if there's something in the chat that maybe is because I've got plenty of time to talk. So from time to time, I might ask you to give me feedback if people are putting things into the chat. Okay, that should be dealt with. Okay, thank you very much. All right. So this is what I'm going to talk about today, right? First of all, what is virtual exchange and how it differs to virtual mobility? Because these are two terms that you have probably heard a lot recently. And, there's a big difference between them. And I'm just going to start off by clarifying the differences there. Okay. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about why is there so much interest in virtual exchange, why it has become so important. Okay. Then what do students and teachers learn from virtual exchange? Because this is an activity, like I mentioned earlier, that I think is valuable not only for students, that we engage our students in this, but us as teachers, whether we're teaching at university or teaching in secondary school or primary school. Teachers also benefit from taking part in virtual exchanges. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why, okay? Then I'm going to talk about some examples of, shall we say, new initiatives, new things that are happening in this field, because this is a field that is constantly changing. It's very closely linked to innovation in education and in foreign language education, and it's being set up and being carried out in lots of very different ways. And I'm going to just show you some new initiatives that are beginning to appear. And then finally, maybe talk a little bit about, if you are a teacher and you want to use virtual exchange, what things you should be keeping in mind about how to go about using it, okay? And give you some practical examples there, all right? So that's what I'm going to do. So first of all, what is virtual exchange, all right? Well, basically, virtual exchange is like an umbrella term. It covers like lots of different sort of forms of activities, but they all have the following things in common, okay? It's about bringing learners from different countries into online intercultural interaction and collaboration together, okay, with partners from other cultural contexts, from other schools, from other classrooms in other countries. But this takes place as a part of an integrated part of their coursework. And it takes place also under the guidance of educators. Now, under the guidance of educators means very simply that the teachers that organize these things play a very active role in setting up the exchanges, in designing the tasks, designing the assessment, and then acting as mentors to the students as they interact together. Because as we're going to see, it's not simply a matter of bringing your students together and then sitting back and watching the magic happen, all right? It doesn't work like that. Students need guidance in how to interact online. They need guidance in how to interpret what they are receiving from their partners or what is happening in their Zoom meetings with their international partners. They need guidance and support in all of this. So that is why it is so important that virtual exchanges include this reference to the guidance of educators, of what, the role of the teacher in all of this. Now, you might have heard different terms to refer to this, okay? Telecollaboration, or online intercultural exchange are very common terms that are used in foreign language teaching, okay, as is e-tandem. E-tandem or teletandem is very common, where you have, for example, maybe Spanish and English learners working together, and the Spanish learner, the Spanish student helps the English student to learn Spanish and vice versa. That's e-tandem or teletandem. If you go into the faculties of economics and business studies, you will hear them talking about global virtual teams, right? In the United States, in universities across the United States, you hear a lot about COIL, okay? That teachers say, I'm doing COILs, all right? And COILs are collaborative online international learning, which are essentially a form of virtual exchange as well. So there are all of these terms. So that's why we're kind of pushing for virtual exchange to have one term that refers to all of these in some way, so that we all know what we're talking about. Because very often there's been a lack of synergies and a lack of communication between different areas, different academic areas, because people are talking about and publishing things about telecollaboration, but they're not reading the research about COIL and vice versa, okay? So we're trying to have a kind of a common term that will, people know what we're all talking about. However, virtual exchange is not the same as virtual mobility, okay? So virtual mobility is about allowing students from one educational institution to follow courses organized at a different institution without having to leave home. Okay, now a very simple example of that is that during this COVID, maybe you have students that do Erasmus or physical mobility programs. They would normally travel maybe from Turkey to Spain, where I'm based at the moment, for example. However, during COVID, of course, many students were not able to or didn't want to travel in their study programs. So they did virtual mobility, which means that they would have followed the courses in Spain online. They would have done the exams online, and then their marks would have been sent home from Spain to Turkey, as like in a traditional one. So that is virtual mobility. Virtual exchange, as we have seen, is quite different. Okay, it's about students in different classes collaborating online together. And that normally happens in the sense that, you know, if I have students doing a virtual exchange as part of one of my courses, well, then I will give them a part of their final grade of their coursework for their virtual exchange and for what they have done in it. Okay, so that's, you know, they're very, you know, there are big differences between these. Okay, I've tried to set it up here for you so that it's quite clear. You know, virtual mobility students will register with the foreign university. They will follow lectures and classes online at the foreign university. The students focus on course content, okay, and then they get credit from the partner university. Whereas in virtual exchange, students are, you know, continue at their home university, okay, and they continue their normal courses here. But as part of their work, they engage and collaborate with students from other countries. Okay, so it's, you know, it's quite different. And I'm not saying one is better than the other or superior to the other. I'm not criticizing virtual mobility, but what I do think is important is that we differentiate between the both, because they're very, as you can see here, they're very clearly different activities. All right, so we, you know, I think it benefits us to make that clear. Okay, now, but you know, why is there currently such interest in virtual exchange? Well, one of the possible reasons for this is the limitations of physical mobility. Okay, now. And Sebnem, I'm going to ask you to come in here now and maybe look at the chat, because I'm going to ask people to put into the chat, you know, what percentage of students in your university actually engage in a physical mobility program. So if you're at a university, maybe you could say what university you're at and tell us, you know, what percentage of students from your university actually go abroad. I won't show that yet. Maybe you can put your ideas into the chat, and Sebnem, you can tell me, because I'm not able to read the chat.
I'll be checking when people look at their responses. Physical mobility, we mean, right, Robert? Physical?
Yes, traveling abroad. Yeah, so going on, you know, maybe Erasmus or, you know, other international study programs like that.
Yeah, I can give like oral feedback as well, like as a faculty from our program, like we as the foreign language education department, like our students like apply and they're usually accepted, and we have like a huge number of students like traveling like abroad for Erasmus exchange, and the answer is like Senem says like, well, I don't know the exact number, but I assume it's around 50% at least. 50%. And Gülşah says like still quite high in foundation universities. There's a difference between like public and foundation universities in Turkey. And Ozan says in the last 5 years, like 454 students from Sabancı University, a foundation university in Istanbul. Interesting but true, the numbers even doubled in my institution, says Gülşah. 600 students in at İSTİ University.
Okay, so very high numbers. Okay,
yeah, very high numbers. Yes.
Okay, well, it might surprise you then if if the colleagues located in Turkey, but if you look at other European countries from the European Union, you will see that only 8%, okay, an average of only 8% of students actually travel abroad during their studies. Okay, there's a very high participation there from the Netherlands, but I mean, very high participation is 22%. Okay, the average in Europe, we don't have the numbers there for Turkey, I'm afraid. These most recent data that I was able to come across was that only 8% go abroad. Okay, so this is an issue. All right, because if you think that getting students to travel abroad to learn foreign languages, to develop their intercultural skills, to develop all these soft skills that we talk about that are so important, and people learn through international contact and international travel. I mean, if only 8% are doing this, then what happens to all the others that don't travel abroad? All right, and there's another issue as well. That simply getting students to study abroad is not necessarily the solution to all our problems anyway, right? there's this really good book that I recommend to you all called Cosmopolitan Learning for a Global Era by Sarah Richardson. And this is a really, a very critical book of physical mobility, I think, and the way physical mobility programs work at the moment. And she says, the espoused benefits from physical mobility do not derive from the act of crossing borders, but instead from two other factors. First, the encounters that students have, and secondly, the influence of their psychological makeup and how they respond to these encounters. So what she's saying here is, simply by going abroad doesn't make people interculturally competent. It depends on the encounters that the students have when they go abroad, who they meet, what context they move in. And secondly, the influence of their psychological makeup. So how open are they to learning from these encounters and these experiences and the stress that it might involve. And we know that nowadays so many students are traveling abroad. It's not like maybe 20 years ago when I did my when I was engaged in physical mobility myself as a student, or even 30 years ago. Then, oh my God, I shouldn't say 20, getting old. Anyway, it was a very different in those days when 20, 30 years ago, when students went abroad, they very much lost contact with their home culture, in the sense that they maybe rang home once a week. They got a letter from their parents or from their friends once every 2 or 3 weeks. Whereas now, when students go abroad, they bring their phones with them, they bring their laptops with them, and they can stay completely in contact with their home culture, using Zoom, using WhatsApp, using whatever they want to. They can, read the online newspapers. Well, nobody reads online newspapers anymore, apparently. But, they can stay in contact with the home culture constantly. So, simply by going abroad isn't going to make people interculturally competent. So what we're talking about here is maybe using virtual exchange as, obviously not as good as physical mobility, but at least making it very focused, making it very intense, and making it educationally shaped contact with other cultures. Okay. Another reason why virtual exchange has become so popular is obviously the past couple of years and what has happened with COVID. Okay, it has forced universities to start looking at international ways. Digital or technological ways of giving students international experiences. Okay, and that shows it here in this recent study. All of a sudden, students are interested in virtual mobility or collaborative. Universities are interested in virtual mobility or collaborative online learning options. Okay, and I can see that in the amount of universities and networks that are looking for, training courses, and they're looking to find out more about how this works. Another reason for governmental support for virtual exchange is all about intercultural conflict and the need to increase dialogue between, shall we say, the Western world and the Arab Muslim world. Okay, there are two organizations coming out of the one of them from the United States, called the Stevens Initiative, and you see that they support and promote virtual exchange. And if you go to their website, it says very clearly this is about developing communication between the United States and Middle East and North Africa. Okay, and the Erasmus Plus virtual exchange program is also, very much about connecting people from Europe with what they call the Southern Mediterranean. Okay, so this is I think organizations and governments see this as a way of promoting dialogue and promoting understanding between the Arab Muslim world and, shall we say, the Western world. Okay. Now, how is virtual exchange being integrated into university education? I would say there's 3 different ways. Okay, pre-mobility, blended mobility, and class-to-class exchange. So pre-mobility means that you engage students in a virtual exchange before they go on their physical mobility programs. It's not just a case of getting your students and sending them abroad without knowing anything or not having any contact with the partner university or the country where they are going. You try to get them into contact with students that are already in that country, and that prepares them, shall we say, for their experience or their international experience. Blended mobility, this is a new thing, okay, and there's very few examples of it out there. Okay, I think we're going to find, and I'm going to show you in a few minutes why, we're going to find a lot more examples of this happening in the future. This is where periods of online collaboration are then combined with physical mobility, okay? And then class-to-class exchange, which is the classic way this is done, where you have 2 or 3 classes in different countries collaborating online together as part of their coursework, okay? Now, how does that work in practice, okay? Just to break it down into a very simple, framework for you, okay? Imagine a teacher in Turkey teaching a course on ecological issues, contacts a partner teacher in Spain who is working on the same topic, okay? Over a couple of months, the teachers negotiate tasks, timetable, assessment procedures. And then they also agree on a virtual learning environment, like a hub, an online place where you can have the interaction take place. Maybe it's Moodle. And their students are formed into working groups of maybe 4 Spanish students and 4, sorry, that should be TR for Turkish students, okay? We do this, we break them into groups, because if you have maybe 30, 40 students in your class and 30, 40 in the other class, you can't simply put them all into the same room together and ask them to all talk and all participate. So you break them into working groups, and that allows them to get to know each other and collaborate more intensively together. And then over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, students then do their virtual exchange. They do different types of tasks. And these tasks normally become more and more challenging as they get to know each other and as they get used to the whole exchange. They introduce themselves, maybe using videos, maybe using some of those lovely tools that Gizem mentioned before. Students then maybe compare findings to a survey that they do in their 2 campuses. Okay, and then finally, the biggest challenge is that they are asked to work together, to collaborate and make something together. Maybe make a video, make a presentation, make an essay, make a project, whatever. Okay, so they have to work together. And that, of course, where you have to collaborate and make something together, that's always the most challenging task that you can ask them to do. And then following the project, maybe the students will submit portfolios, maybe they will do class presentations. And for all of that work, then they will receive maybe 20%, 30% of their final grade for it, depending on, how your course is structured and how much they've had to work on it. All right? So that's just to give you an idea, a practical example of how one of these exchanges normally works. Okay, now, so that's what it is. That's why we do virtual exchange, and that is what virtual exchange is. Now, the next question is, what do we know about it? Does it work? Okay, what does research tell us? Well, we've been very lucky that in the past number of years, over the past 2 or 3 years, we've had a huge number of what we call large-scale impact reports. And these are projects normally or finance studies that look at a large number of exchanges that have happened over a period of time, and they try to draw conclusions from it. Because up until now, much of the research has been based on one exchange. Many articles, there's a lot of good research there, but they're normally based on one exchange between one class in Germany and one class in America, for example. These studies are talking about maybe 20, 30 exchanges that have a lot in common. So you're talking maybe with results of maybe 1,000 students or 2,000 students doing the same surveys, answering the same questions. And that gives us a kind of a better overview of the impact of these things. So what I did last year was sit down and I went through these and I looked for, commonalities, things that we could say that, all of these reports have in common. What are they telling us about virtual exchange? Okay. And I'll tell you first about what students seem to be learning from virtual exchange, and secondly, what teachers seem to be learning from virtual exchange. Well, first of all, and this is probably an important thing to say, is that virtual exchange tends to be a very popular learning activity among students, especially for those with little experience of intercultural contact. Now, I don't know what the situation is where all of you are today, but I can tell you that, for example, here in León in Spain, where I am, it's a beautiful town in the north of Spain, but it is not what you would describe as cosmopolitan. And in fact, most of my students, when they come to first year university, they have never used English with people that are not from Spain. They've been learning English all their lives in classrooms with other Spanish people, practicing, talking together. And that, of course, is not an intercultural way of learning a language. So this is, very first, when I engage my first and second year students in these exchanges, they are amazed that they are actually able to use English with foreign speakers, okay? Look at this quotation by one of the students. I've learned to overcome my fear of not being understood by the people from different countries. I tried to formulate my utterances as clearly as possible, and it worked. At first I was scared, but then not really. Our communication was great. So this great sense of achievement that, yes, my English isn't that bad after all, right? I don't know if in Turkey this is common, maybe in more rural areas, that, students don't get a chance to actually use English with people from other countries. But that is definitely the case here, and it is definitely the case in many other places around the world, right? The studies also show that virtual exchange contributes to specific aspects of foreign language development. Okay, so understanding and reception of the target language, vocabulary knowledge, okay, and obviously the ability to interact with other speakers in the target language. Okay, but language development is, in many of the studies, they mention, pushing learners out of their comfort zone. Look at this comment here. This virtual exchange enhances my communication skill. When we have a discussion about our project, I need to push my English communication skill to have a great discussion with my partners. So, if students are used to constantly just using English in the classroom, engaging in a virtual exchange means that they have to activate it and use it in ways that maybe they don't normally do it on a day-to-day basis. All right. So, it also makes students aware of, cultural differences in how they use English and how people interact. I keep saying English, by the way. I mean, there's no reason why it should be only in English, virtual exchange. Virtual exchanges can happen in 2 languages, okay? Or they can happen with a lingua franca, which is normally English, of course, but there are examples of exchanges in French, in German, in other languages, okay? So awareness of cultural difference in interactional norms. Have a look at these, a couple of examples. In terms of thinking about my own society and values, one of the aspects that I found interesting that before this project I did not consider was tone, okay, tone of voice. What I mean by tone is the way Spaniards tend to speak sometimes. We usually are quite straightforward, and it may sound rude or strong to other cultures. That aspect is something that I will be working on, okay? And the other students said, I see that we Spaniards are more extrovert than other cultures, but I already knew this. What I have realized is that this can be interpreted as pushing, as kind of pushy by other cultures. So, by coming into contact with people from other cultures, you realize that your way of communicating isn't the norm. It isn't the only way of communicating. And this is great awareness raising, okay, for students. So people that might think they are very good communicators all may realize that maybe their grammar and their vocabulary and their pronunciation is very good, but the way they come across, their international styles, can be interpreted in different ways. Okay. Virtual exchange also facilitates cultural learning. Okay. And there's lots of studies that show, obviously, that, students learn about the partner culture itself, the relationship between the 2 countries, factual information on the subjects that they're working on, whether it's immigration, religion, gender roles, differing national reactions to the COVID crisis. And this is very important, growing awareness of cultural diversity and becoming aware of their partner's multiple identities and the need to avoid regarding cultures as monolithic. It is very difficult after a virtual exchange for people to talk about Americans, Turks, Spanish, because in a virtual exchange, you are meeting Turkish people, Spanish people, whoever they are, that are very different. They are Spanish, but they are also, they may have, different political views, different religious views. They have, we all have our multiple identities, and that becomes clear, okay? So this helps students then to move away from simple stereotypes. The Turkish are like this, the Americans are like that, okay? This is, I think, a really important outcome. And finally, virtual exchange also helps develop a wide range of transversal or soft skills. I don't know in your universities, but here in Spain, we are asked constantly to help to develop our students' soft skills what they call transversal skills, which students will then need when they go to work, right? So, and the Erasmus Plus Virtual Exchange program has shown very clearly how virtual exchange can develop students' critical thinking skills, their ability to work in teams, to collaboratively solve problems, and their digital competences. Okay, so these are important skills that I think students will need in their workplace in the future. Okay, so and this is a great place for them to develop these skills. But again, to show you a couple of examples from personally an exchange that I ran a couple of years ago, these skills are best developed when things go wrong. Remember, I mentioned earlier on that people are learn best when they are pushed. Okay, and it comes again very clearly in this project. Look what my students told me about developing collaborative skills. I have learned how to be patient working in groups and to adapt to tricky situations. Okay, and look at this other student talking about time management. The fact of working with people from other countries prepares us for the future problems that we may have. That is to say, we learned how to face problems of timing or agreement. I have also learned that we have to understand and respect other people's thoughts. So, it's when things go wrong in projects, or when they are forced to, to adapt to things that aren't, very straightforward, that's when students learn. That's when they feel they are developing the skills that they need, okay? However, this is a warning, okay? And this is something that comes up in a couple of the studies, all right? I'm not going to read out these, but I'm going to show you 3 comments now by Spanish students. And Sebnem, if you don't mind, maybe you could come in and in the chat, I'm going to ask people to say, what do you think about these comments? Do you think that these are positive comments or not? If not, why not? Okay, so what do you think about that? Is that positive? Are these positive learning outcomes, or what do you think? Sebnem, what are people putting into the chat?
Yeah, I'm just checking.
Okay.
Aydan Ersoy says, like, positive students have found a lot of similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And Tamari says positive. They are quite positive. They realize they are not so different anymore as world citizens. This is Gülşah Kırshan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing on 3. All 3 positive, says Sue Bedini. Senem says students are surprised to see that they are more similar than they expected. Mm-hmm. And Tuba says definitely positive. They have realized something that is already there as reality.
Okay.
And
all right, good. Sorry, continue.
We draw people closer to each other, and comments are coming. Shall I continue or stop?
Sure. Okay. If there's 1 or 2 more. Yeah.
Ozan Tekin says they thought they could have been different before this virtual exchange, which demonstrates their changing attitudes and thoughts towards cultural differences. And Matthew says they are positive in terms of getting along with people from different countries, but shows limited learning as the cultures in general are similar. And Ali says, I wish I could be a virtual exchange student, commenting on the positive gains for learners. I think that's all. I read all of them.
All right, very good. Thank you. Okay, so, I mean, you guys are right to say that these are initially positive. And on one level, these are positive outcomes, okay? Because, students, I suppose, are saying, these Spanish students talking about their American partners, they're saying, well, we have a lot in common, okay? However, we have to be careful, because as any of you know that have been abroad or that have studied abroad or worked abroad, there is more to cultural difference than, sports, music, and the timetables, okay? And there's a danger that we could engage in what Bennett calls minimization of difference, okay? Because if you think about it, it is very easy to engage in a conversation, shall we say, a superficial conversation with somebody from another culture, and say, oh, we all like Beyonce, we all like, I don't know, going for walks, we all like football, therefore, deep down, we are all the same, okay? However, as we all know, the difference between Turkey and Spain and Ireland and America goes much further than that, okay? There are cultural differences in our mentalities, in our principles, in our values that need to be looked at. They need to be explored and explored and discussed and compared, shall we say, in a respectful way. And so I think we should be pushing students to go further than this, okay? This is a nice start off, okay? But it is not enough. I think virtual exchange should go further and push students to look at cultural differences in maybe in a more more detailed way, okay, in a braver way, okay. And a lot of this is related to, and now we come back to the role of the teacher again, what I mentioned at the beginning. It comes back to the role of the teacher in designing the tasks that the students do together when they do these exchanges. Okay, look at these tasks here. Tell your partner about your favorite places to go at night in your hometown. Post an image to the forum that exemplifies to your partners an aspect of their daily routine, okay? These are simple tasks. And if you ask your students to do only these type of tasks in their virtual exchange, the chances are they will say, well, deep down, we're all the same, okay? In Turkey, they like eating certain types of food, whereas in Spain, we like eating other types of food. But we all like good food. We all like going to nice restaurants. That's fine. The world, we're all the same. However, when you ask them to do more complex things like this, and look at these examples. These are examples of real tasks that we asked them to do. We asked students, for example, to work with their partners to create a document calling Making the European Union More Relevant for Young People. And the final document was submitted to representatives of the European Parliament. And in fact, the photo you can see at the top of the screen there is a group of students from Finland, Poland and Spain presenting to a member of the European Parliament. He's there on the bottom left-hand corner there, you can see him. And the students are there in class, and in their classes telling the member of the European Parliament about their findings of their project and what they had written in their documents and things like that. Look at the second one. Work together with your partners to design a video about an environmental problem on your campus. Once your videos are ready, they will be published by both universities in their social networks. That too is something we did here a couple of years ago, when we had our students make short videos about problems, and then these were shared by the university's websites and Facebooks and Twitters and things like that. When students know that they're doing stuff like this, these are messy projects, okay? They are stressful, they require a lot of intensive collaboration, but it is there students begin to find, I think, the real idea of cultural difference, of intercultural learning, of what it involves, okay? So I think the first two tasks maybe are okay as a starting point, but always in your exchanges, you need to go further and force students to collaborate together, okay? This is what one teacher says in one of the studies that I was looking at. Producing something together is the most important part of the whole project. It's a hands-on activity, and they have to generate something, and this is where they realize cultural differences, how people go about things, and how they deal with it. You see? Okay, so this is, like, I think, a really important finding. Okay, that's from the Evaluate report, one of the projects I mentioned. Now, let's move on quickly to what teachers learn from virtual exchange, because teachers also benefit from these things, and we've seen these in these studies. Okay, they see it. Teachers, of course, develop their methodological knowledge. Okay, they develop professionally as teachers because they're learning about a new activity. They're learning how to collaborate with other teachers. Okay, they also very often, the teachers that collaborate in these projects go on then with their partners to maybe ask for projects, to write articles together, to meet at conferences together. So you're developing their network. Okay. Teachers are also developing their own intercultural skills, because you as a teacher, you have to negotiate via email and via Zoom with the other teacher about how you're going to run this project, how you're going to solve the problems that emerge. So your own skills are also being developed here, okay? And then general professional competences. course designing skills, organizational skills. All of these things are reported to be developed by teachers. Okay, look at this one teacher again from the Evaluate project. Virtual exchange means putting yourself in the position of the other, giving in, and this is a teacher talking now, okay? Giving in at times, being more open and more aware of how other institutions work. So this collaborative work has been very enriching for me because it helped me to see other points of view and other ways of working. And it also enriched the subject, adding dimensions that weren't there before. Okay, so you can see this feeling of enrichment, of professional enrichment and professional development that teachers can get by doing these type of projects. Okay, but however, your institutions have to recognize the work. Okay, teachers keep asking for the work that they do in virtual exchanges to be recognized. Okay, I believe teachers get motivated when what they do is valued. And this can be valued by giving them a recognition of their work. Another one said, that's what they're doing with everything nowadays, with all the other extra things that we do, including it as part of our teaching load, even if it's just very little, like half a credit. And that might encourage other teachers to do it. And that is what is beginning to happen here. You know, if in some universities, if you as a teacher run a virtual exchange and you can prove that you have done it, then your university will give you a small discount in the amount of time you have to teach, for example, okay? Or they provide you with funding to travel to meet your partner teacher, or maybe they provide you with funding for training, okay? So there is, you know, there's lots of different ways, reduction in teaching load, badges, recognition, in internal promotion systems, maybe in order to gain promotion in your university. Innovative work is an important part of that, and that's where you can, you know, get value for your virtual exchange. Okay, but teachers, as you can see, this is a lot of work organizing these things. So teachers deserve recognition. Okay. Now, I'm well, 11:15. I'm okay for a few more minutes. I just want to show you a couple of new ways where you know, virtual exchange and how virtual exchange is developing. Okay, the examples come from Germany and Spain, but there are, you know, these are valued, I think, in other places. The first one is that there is an outsourcing of foreign language practice with native speakers. Okay, there are companies that exist that say to universities, you pay us money, and in return for that, your students can log on to our platform, and if they want to learn English, we will put them into contact with native speakers of English who will talk to them and who will engage in conversations with them, okay? Conversify, Talk Abroad, Lingua Meeting, there's lots of these. But these are professional businesses that are, you know, monetizing the idea of virtual exchange, okay? So this has benefits in some way because you as a teacher, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to find partners for your students. The company does that for you. But at the same time, you as a teacher lose contact with the whole exchange. Okay, so I think it has benefits, but it also has drawbacks as well. Okay, so you can see, you know, this emphasis on native speakers. I think it's questionable also whether we should be, you know, running around looking for native speakers of these languages, especially English, when most of the speakers of English in the world are not native speakers. We should be probably looking for partners in other universities, in other countries where English is used as a lingua franca for communication. Okay, so there's some kind of research questions that we can be thinking about, you know. What is the, you know, the quality of the foreign language learning experience in these type of systems, you know? The second one is blended mobility. Blended mobility, as I explained earlier, is the combination of physical mobility, short periods of physical mobility with online collaboration. And in the new Erasmus Plus program, they have something which are called blended intensive programs. And blended intensive programs involve a group of students, you know, having a physical mobility of only between 5 and 30 days. So, you know, quite a short physical mobility, and that being combined with a virtual component. So imagine students, you could, you know, collaborate online on a project together for 1 or 2 months, and then they would meet in one of the partner universities to finish the project together face to face, and then to present it in a physical location in beautiful Istanbul, for example, right? So, you know, these are the type of things that they are beginning to look at now in the Erasmus Plus program, okay? But these require to be researched, okay, because they are very new, these ideas. There's very few examples of blended mobility programs out there, okay. So how can we best do it? And what will be the different learning outcomes that emerge from these type of programs? I think this is very interesting. And the third one I want to draw your attention to is this link of trying to link classroom and real world interaction, okay? And the Valiant project that I'm working on at the moment is an example of this, okay? In the Valiant program, what we are trying to do is bring classes of student teachers, so maybe people that are doing their MAs in foreign language teaching, for example, into contact online with real teachers, with in-service teachers who are working all over Europe, okay? So for example, the exchange that I was just running the last semester involved my students here in León, a class of student teachers in Bochum in Germany, but then a group of in-service teachers from all over Europe. So say we had maybe 20 different teachers from Slovenia, from Spain, from Portugal. And once a week, our students would meet with these teachers. They discuss articles together. They talk about the problems they were having in their classes, and the students would have to propose solutions for them. Our students would interview them about how they use technologies and things like that. And this is like very beneficial for both student teachers and teachers, okay? So it had great benefits for both. So this connecting the classroom to the real world, I think, is something that is going to, is something that we could explore a lot more, okay? But again, we have lots of research to think about, how to best set these things up. So there is something here for the student teachers, but there is also something for the teachers. And that is actually a challenge, okay? We have to think carefully about that. All right. Now, my last point today, okay, because I've been speaking for a long time. And I know what it's like to sit in front of a screen for an hour. It's not very healthy, is it? So the last thing I want to talk about is this importance of, preparing students for online interaction, okay? And the Stevens Initiative, one of their reports that we looked at the beginning, says, because experience with cross-cultural communication can vary, basic training on communication norms and expectations should be provided, okay? What do they mean by that? What they're saying is that, we think our students are digital natives, okay? We call them digital natives. But just because you've been born over the past 10 or 20 years, that does not make you a good online intercultural communicator and collaborator. These are skills that, students have to develop. Okay, the same as we as teachers, we have to develop them, all right? And we shouldn't assume that students are going to be good online collaborators. Okay, just look at this. I'm not going to read it out. I'm going to, just show you that. This is a message sent from a German student to our partner in Ireland, okay? And Sebnem, I'm going to ask everybody, if you were the student in Ireland, how would you feel if you got this message? So if you are the Irish student that gets this message from your new partner, your new virtual exchange partner in Germany, how do you feel? Let's see what people have to say in the chat.
Shocked. Sue said shocked. I would feel upset, extremely overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Offended.
Very good. Yeah. Okay. Offended. Okay. All right. Well, you see.
Too direct.
So, okay. All right. Well done. So you get the idea. Okay. This is a very good student with very good English, a good hardworking student who has been reading up about Ireland. But yet, when she sits down in front of a screen, she doesn't stop to think about, maybe I shouldn't ask so many questions at the beginning. Maybe I should talk a little bit about myself, okay? And this is where we come back to the role of the teacher. The teacher is clear, the importance of the role of the teacher here is very clear. Providing guidance, suggesting maybe you shouldn't say this, maybe you should do that instead, okay? and helping students understand things. One more example and then I'll stop, okay? You all know WhatsApp. In Turkey, Sebnem, lots of people use WhatsApp in Turkey?
Yeah. More than you can imagine, I guess.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, well, probably the same as Spain then as well. Okay. And you're all familiar with this famous kiss emoji, okay? So this example comes from an exchange between students in Spain, Sweden, and Israel, okay? And one night, the teacher in Sweden wrote to me, the teacher in Spain, and the teacher in Israel to say the following. One evening, a member of one of the Spanish class closed out an interaction in WhatsApp with one of my students with a kiss emoji. Suddenly, my Swedish student was stressed because she was faced with a difficult dilemma. Did she have to kiss her back? My student says she only sends kisses to close friends, but this was a group member and this WhatsApp chat was more professional. However, if she didn't send a kiss back, what other emoji could she send? So here we have something that's so international like WhatsApp, that's something that is part of all of our lives. And yet, even that is used culturally in different ways. Because what we have here is, the Spanish way of using WhatsApp and using these emojis. I tried to explain to the teacher in Sweden that in Spain, this is used quite often, this kiss emoji, because un beso is a very common way of signing off, okay? From a phone call or anything like that, saying a kiss, okay? And there's nothing sexual or flirtatious or whatever about it. It's just a sign of affection, more or less, basically, okay? Whereas in Sweden, obviously it had very other connotations, okay? And is used much less often and certainly not in academic contexts, all right? So, these are just examples to show you the importance of the role of the teacher and the importance of giving students guidance, bringing these examples into your classes and saying, look what happened. Now, why did you give that kiss emoji? What does it mean for you? What does it mean for your partners? Okay. And that's where the learning happens, right? That's where the intercultural learning happens. So very quickly to conclude, we know that virtual exchange works, okay? But it is clearly not a question of matching students and sitting back and waiting for the magic to happen, okay? Teachers have to be, design tasks that work, okay? And then guide students in their interactions, okay? It is not a replacement for physical mobility programs, but it can be a complement to it, as we have seen, okay? And that needs to be explored, all right? Virtual exchange requires integration into the curriculum, and students deserve credit for their work, okay? They deserve, through the portfolios, through the presentations, but whatever, they deserve credit at the end of their course for having taken part. Otherwise, they won't do these things because they take time. And teachers also need credit for their work, as I've said. And finally, we know that we still need to know more about how students can learn more effectively in virtual exchange. There's a lot more research to be done in this area about how to effectively design virtual exchanges so that they produce good quality learning for our students. So I'm sorry for talking too long. I didn't think I was going to talk so long, but I suppose I just got carried away a little bit. I've referred. There's lots of different links to those publications that I mentioned, to platforms where you can learn more about virtual exchange. I put them all into that document that was shared with you at the beginning, okay, during break time. Okay, so I hope that will be of some use to you. Thank you very much indeed for listening.
Thank you very much for this informative and inspiring talk, Robert. I'm sure people have their plans for initial plans for virtual exchange. Actually, I guess Tamari and Ali are planning to have one in the chat. So if you would like to hear some summary of the chat interactions, I can give you a short summary.
Sure.
So starting with Sezen and our organization team, people actually question the definition of differences. Sorry, the challenge of definition with differences, because people actually usually take differences as challenge. In the first example you actually showed us, so people some participants questioned the definition of difference and why people take difference as a challenge. That was one type of interaction. And people actually commented on the challenges of of virtual exchange. Like Ozan had a comment, a question. He said, like, I was wondering if these projects incorporated sensitive topics such as race, ethnicity, and politics. And your example actually showed, was after that. So kind of a response to that. Like, if you would like to comment on that as well. And Tamari, actually, in the question and answer sections, she said that, let me read that. For you, dear Professor Daud, I was myself involved as intercultural virtual exchange learning project initiated by Dresden Technical University before the pandemic, and was engaged as a facilitator with Georgian students at final stage. I'm interested if you are planning to launch VB for EFL teachers from non-EU member states, for example, Georgia. That's her question or comment to you.
The Valiant project that I was talking about there, the idea is that we have to focus on including teachers and student teachers from the members of the consortium, from the countries that the consortium comes from. However, we did last year accept some colleagues from Russia, some teachers from Russia to take part as well. I believe that there are some teachers from Turkey that this year want to take part in the project as well. So, we're open to a limited number of people from outside of the project consortium members. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And one final question by Kadir Karakaya, Dr. O'Dowd, thank you for the great presentation. Do you think providing training to students prior to virtual exchange experience could potentially decrease the differences learners would notice themselves by experience? This is something similar to what I had in mind, actually, with the limited budgets for physical mobility and with pandemics and etc. I think we would have some kind of initial stage of virtual exchange as a prerequisite to physical exchange. That's my understanding, I guess, very similar to Kadir's question. Robert, your comment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think by providing students with training and preparing them for their exchanges, what you are doing is you're making them more sensitive to the potential learning experience and the potential differences. You are helping them to go a step further than just assuming that cultural difference is not simply types of food, timetables, superficial type of things. It goes deeper than that. And if you can show them examples of students' messages, you can use that as content in your classes. I think it's not going to, harm the learning experience. I think you're going to sensitize and make students more open to learning differences.
And people actually indicated they enjoyed the talk, and it was a pleasure to listen to you.
Thank you very much, everybody, for listening and for participating in the chat. Okay.
So yeah, that would be our official thank you for the great talk and informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I wish you all the success with the rest of your.
Because we don't have emoji.
That's fine. Okay. All right. So thank you very much, and I wish you all the success with your conference. I think you have a great program, and I look forward, like I said, to seeing you all in Istanbul someday. Please God.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.